Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Hot Tag podcast here on goic.net. Thanks for joining us on our second episode. And I'm Adam Stephen Kelly, joined as always by
Ed Kelly.
And we're here for your 60-minute audio fix of the latest news, reviews of pro wrestling, plus the mailbag as well, which we'll be diving into later. Got a few questions sent in between now and our last show.
Don't forget also we are on Facebook. Just type in the Hot Tag podcast on Facebook and you'll find us. There you can post in your questions, your general reviews of the show, and also talk about all things pro wrestling.
Absolutely, anything you want pro wrestling, just put that in the Hot Tag podcast group on Facebook. Send in your questions there, as well as the email address, which is hottagmailbag@yahoo.com, and also on Twitter. I'm actually the only one of us who's on Twitter at the moment, and you'll have to sort that out in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
But you can follow me on Twitter or ask me anything on there. It's at BritGeek, AICN on Twitter. Bit of a weird name, but yeah, there you go. So the news actually in the last 24 hours have come out is some Diva news, actually quite a lot of Diva news. But Kelly has been granted her release from WWE.
Yes, I don't know whether that surprised you or not really. I mean, she hasn't really done a lot over the last few months, has she?
No, she came back in August for one show. She had one match, I think she won. But she requested some time off in May. So had a couple of months off, and I think WWE were hoping she'd come back full time after her short break. But she wanted more time off, so I think they've just mutually parted ways.
Well, as many wrestlers have said before, you don't ask Vince for holiday. He doesn't have holidays. He doesn't take holidays. He doesn't believe in them, so probably didn't go down very well with him. More surprisingly is the rumoured report at the moment that Beth Phoenix might be on her way out.
Yeah, that'll be another big blow for the Divas division. Kelly, one of the top divas. Beth Phoenix, another one of the top divas. The Glamazon reportedly is wanting to leave, but although she has denied the report, but of course she is up until the actual day that happens. So only time will tell, but that's certainly going to be a big loss to the Divas division. I mean, she's definitely the strongest on the roster. I think Natalia's probably going to be the number one now in terms of sheer size and strength and the Divas. But it's going to be a shame, especially since she's had a very good match against Natalia on SmackDown, which was aired last night actually when we record this. But I haven't yet seen it. But I am looking forward to see that match because apparently it is very good, and it will just show you that Beth Phoenix will be a big loss to the WWE.
Well, I think it will be. I think it'll be a big loss to both parties because for WWE's point of view, they've got a big diva there. I think not say she's too good for the Diva division, but she could also certainly they could put her with some of the smaller male wrestlers and get put up some runs with some of the male wrestlers there as well, just to extenuate the fact that she is so strong. It's also a shame that Karma's not there anymore as well, because imagine the matches those two could have had.
Yeah, I think Beth Phoenix versus Karma was somewhat of a Diva's dream match, and certainly could have gone on at WrestleMania earlier this year. But in the space of 6 months, we've had the release of Karma, possibly seeing Beth Phoenix go. So under the WWE roof, that match isn't going to happen anytime soon. Maybe they'll end up in TNA. Maybe we'll see that there, but only time will tell on that one. But another release actually is the NXT diva Raquel Diaz, heel diva over there on NXT. Had a couple of matches. She's won them both actually. Sort of interesting, kind of almost kind of Lady Gaga kind of gimmick on there. But she is the daughter of Vicky Guerrero and the late Eddie Guerrero. But 2 matches, but she's already gone. Released from a development contract with WWE, so I'm not sure the reasons behind that, but a lot of divas on their way out and possibly on their way out.
Yeah, I mean, you like to think with any wrestler, any second generation or third generation wrestler, you like to think they've got a chance because of the it's in their blood. You look at Ted DiBiase, Senior and Junior. Obviously, DiBiase wasn't actually his blood father, DiBiase's, but he carried on the family. Ted DiBiase Jr.'s wrestling. Also, Brett DiBiase is wrestling. Obviously, you've got Joe and Amy Hennig, son and daughter of the late Kurt Hennig, granddaughter and grandson of Larry Axe Hennig. So you think that with someone, especially with Eddie Guerrero's ilk, that she would have a chance in the wrestling business. but maybe there's politics behind it. Maybe the schedule's too tough. We just don't know.
Yeah, especially with NXT being the sort of breeding ground of second and third generation wrestlers. I mean, like you said, you got Joe Hennig, who goes under the name Michael McGillicuddy in NXT, and he's one of the top stars there. You've got people like Vader's son, Bo Dallas, who's the son of IRS, whose granddad is, of course, is Blackjack Mulligan. All kinds of people on there. So it's a shame to see someone with the sort of wrestling lineage in the family as the daughter of Vicky Guerrero and Eddie Guerrero. But there you go.
Okay, let's look at the weekly reviews now of the shows. Starting with WWE Raw. Jim Ross is continuing on the colour commentary following Jerry Lawler's continued absence. But good news though, hopefully he should be back for the Memphis taping of SmackDown, which is absolutely amazing considering it was about 5 weeks since when that show airs, since he had his heart attack.
Yeah, it's about 5 weeks in total if he does indeed return then. He had his live interview on Raw where he said, how he was feeling and how his recovery's going, and he's feeling really good, and the only thing sort of remaining from his heart attack at the moment is his bit of a raspy voice from where the ventilator chew was down his throat, but he's doing very well. And I actually saw another interview where he did say that he was planning on coming back for the October 18th SmackDown tapings in Memphis, so only time will tell there, but he's still focused on coming back to commentary very soon, and actually still wanting to step back into the ring. And actually on the interview in Memphis the other day, he said he feels like he could return to the ring that night. Obviously he wasn't, because I don't think he's quite cleared for that yet. But he said he feels like nothing ever happened, and he's as strong as he ever has been. So that's definitely good news.
Good news. Also this week it marked the return of the Big Show.
Yeah, quite a noteworthy show actually. The Big Show returned after about a month or two now. I can't even remember. But he returned to attack Tenzai and Brodus Clay. They were having a match, but he delivered the WMD to the both of them. And there's definitely three giants actually. Thinking about it, they might be setting up a triple threat match in the near future between Tenzai.
Well, it's good to see they're finally doing something with Brodus Clay, because for 15 weeks in a row now it's come exactly the same match he's having every week, exactly the same. Nothing's different. So they've given him this crazy gimmick, but he's running with it and he's doing a good job. But it's good that they're actually finally doing a bit different with him now, because it was getting a bit boring.
Yeah, I kind of think the whole dancing thing is getting a bit boring now, because once you've seen it once, like the first time I saw it, and it absolutely shocked the hell out of everyone. But I thought it was good. I thought, well, they kind of instantly made him a star. But it's kind of it's gotten a bit old now, and it's maybe time for him to freshen up and have a bit of a change of gimmick, or at least get rid of the entrance.
Definitely. Also, what's your thoughts on Mick Foley?
Yeah, Mick Foley was a special guest. Had an in-ring confrontation with CM Punk. And Foley was imploring Punk to step into the Hell in a Cell match against John Cena in about 4 or 5 weeks' time. Seemed to neglect to say that CM Punk had actually been in 2 previous Hell in a Cell matches in his career. He was kind of hyping it as the first time he would potentially ever step inside the Hell in a Cell structure, but he's actually had a match against, I think it was last year, he had a triple threat match against it was Alberto Del Rio, and it may have even been John Cena actually in Hell in a Cell in a triple threat, and also The Undertaker he faced in Hell in a Cell a few years ago. So Punk versus Cena 1-on-1 in Hell in a Cell certainly won't be the first time Punk's ever faced someone in the Hell in a Cell environment, but I think that'll be a very good match actually. And although of course if Cena can do it, because it's kind of bit of mystery shrouding when he will actually be able to get back in the ring with his injury. But he's most in all likelihood he will be back for Hell in a Cell.
Okay, continuing on the Hell in a Cell theme, what do you think about Sheamus as the Big Show?
Yeah, the Big Show immediately getting into a program with Sheamus. They'll be duking it out for the World Heavyweight Championship at Hell in a Cell. Kind of interesting how the Big Show's basically been just thrown straight into this championship match against Sheamus, but I suppose after Alberto Del Rio lost against Sheamus for the 3rd straight pay-per-view in a row at Night of Champions, it's about time we actually saw someone new in the championship picture.
Do you think Sheamus has done well for the title? Do you think he's made the title look significant, or do you think he's just holding it, waiting for someone more worthy to take over?
No, I don't really think he's been a transitional champion. I think he's been quite a strong champion. I mean, he's certainly been booked strongly. He's hardly ever lost since winning it at WrestleMania, and he's it's good to see him holding the championship for a long time. No, I think he's been booked as a real strong, defiant champion, and he's done a good job of it. But I'm thinking maybe in Hell in a Cell we'll see, possibly in the wake of a devastating matchup between the two of them, maybe Dolph Ziggler will seize the opportunity and cash in.
Excellent. Right, let's move on to Impact Wrestling now. This week it was Sting and Hulk Hogan versus Aces and Eights.
Yeah, in a roundabout way, Aces and Eights basically kidnapped Sting and Hogan and took them to their clubhouse, and made the challenge of basically they wouldn't let Sting and Hogan go unless they agreed to having a match at Bound for Glory with two members from Aces and Eights facing two members from the TNA roster, and I believe it's Sting and someone else. Hogan hasn't said he's going to be competing in that match, so it looks like it's going to be Sting and someone against Aces and Eights. No idea what Hogan's going to do. Maybe he'll just be like at ringside or something. But it was, I don't know, this storyline's all a bit silly. I mean, I guess it's kind of TNA's version of the NWO, except no one really knows who Aces and Eights are, apart from reportedly Luke Gallows is one of the members. It'll be interesting to see how this match goes down at Bound for Glory, but I mean, this whole angle doesn't really. There's no. It's not. It's not a high stakes kind of storyline, and no one really knows what the Aces and Eights, the whole point of them is, and their entire purpose. Apart from possibly wanting just to take over TNA. And they said if they win their match at Bound for Glory, they get free reign over the Impact Zone. So whatever that means, but. They're still in possession of Joseph Parks after hitting him with a hammer on the last week's episode of Impact, and this week they beat a hammer by holding Sting and Hogan at knife point. So it's a bit over the top, this angle. It's the storyline.
It is. You wonder when it's eventually going to come to an end and all will be revealed regarding Aces and Eights. Just want to look ahead regarding Impact to Bound for Glory regarding this match with Austin Aries for the title, because
I just kind of have an inkling that Bully Ray is going to be added to the mix to make it a three-way. Bully Ray doesn't have any Bound for Glory plans as such that have been made on Impact. He keeps sticking his nose in the championship picture, so I'm thinking it may turn into a three-way. But again, going back to what I said last week about the Bound for Glory series and it not making much sense to do it again this year after nobody won it last year, or obviously someone won the series, but they, Robert Roode, he lost at Bound for Glory, he lost his championship match, so it kind of made this year's series worthless. The same thing here, if they change this to a three-way, although I think the match will actually benefit from it, add Bully Ray to that match. By the same token, a three-way kind of makes the fact that Jeff Hardy won the Bound for Glory series
pointless, yeah.
Again, and if they do that the second year in a row, it's like, well, where's the logic? It's a double-edged sword, I think.
Exactly. So there's a brief rundown of what's gone on the TV land. Right, I want a bit of a plugging here. I want to plug our friends at RF Video, Rob Feinstein, at rfvideo.com and rfvideonow.com. This week we're looking at a release that came out a couple of weeks ago now, but nonetheless it's an excellent DVD. It's the RF Video face-off between New Jack and Balls Mahoney. Now, for those of you who know these guys, obviously you know the story behind their real feud, but for those of you who don't know, I'll explain it briefly. Basically, Balls Mahoney, I believe, was working for Frank Goodman, a promoter down in Florida, and some stuff went down there where Balls Mahoney was accused of say, meeting up with a lady and smearing blood all over the walls, some sort of sexual ritual, which she vehemently denies, and amongst other things that has caused bad blood between him and New Jack and real life heat. Rob had the very good idea of bringing these two into a... Well, I won't go into too much detail for it because you do have to see it to understand it all and enjoy it. But he got them faced together to air their problems. And it's an excellent DVD. It's well worth buying, or it's also on the rental side. So if you do get a chance to, you must definitely watch this. It was fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's quite a it's certainly a DVD that ignites from the very beginning. It's very funny actually, and very hostile. Balls Mahoney and New Jack certainly have a lot of hostility towards each other, but it's basically 60 minutes of just full-on arguments really, and lots and lots of shouting. But if you've seen the RF video Balls Mahoney interview, it's kind of a must to get some backstory on this particular face-off. Recommend you seeing that, and also the Menace to Sobriety New Jack shoot interview as well. See those, and then see the face-off for the kind of complete. I guess you could call that the kind of trilogy of nastiness between New Jack and Mahoney. But yeah, it's quite a volatile situation, but it's kind of interesting. I mean, it by the ending of this face-off, it kind of, I think it raises a few more questions than perhaps had going into the face-off. It kind of turns out a bit strange, but definitely recommend you seeing that. It's certainly an interesting video and something a bit different from the average shoot.
Exactly, and you don't have to be just an ECW fan to appreciate it too. Any wrestling fan, or as long as you find out the background story to it, you will enjoy this DVD. And that's from rfvideo.com or rfvideonow.com.
And last week, actually, speaking of DVDs, the last show actually 2 weeks ago, we ran a competition for WWE Falls Count Anywhere on DVD. And we had 3 copies to give away, and we can now announce the 3 winners. Thanks for your entries, and congratulations to Chris Lappin, Owen Taylor, and Josh Simmons. Each of you will be shortly receiving a copy of WWE Falls Count Anywhere, street fights and other out of control matches on 3-disc DVD, and hopefully we'll be having another competition on the next show, because possibly tied into some of the releases that we received today. We've received some advanced copies today of CM Punk's DVD, CM Punk Best in the World, which we're really looking forward to seeing. That's an early review says it's a really incredible release, and it goes into such detail about his career and his early life. WWE Money in the Bank 2012 as well, and The Rock vs Cena Once in a Lifetime release. Thanks to Silvision, we have our advanced copies, and we'll be reviewing those on the next show, and hopefully giving some copies away as well. And now, a big news in the world of DVDs in WWE is that Silvervision, the European and Middle Eastern distributor of WWE's DVDs, had a big announcement this week, and that was that they are, from December 31st, they are ceasing to work with the WWE again. Their license comes to an end, and well, we'll have to see who the new licensee is, but that's the end for new WWE DVDs in Europe and the Middle East. And they will be selling for months and months though, because they do obviously have to clear their stock. But in terms of new releases, we'll have to see where the license ends up.
Okay, should we go to the mailbag?
I think actually you just wanted to say about the Finishers DVD, didn't you?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's a hot topic for me at the moment, because I just watched the WWE top 50 finishers of all time, so I'm sure many of you have seen it. It's been out for a couple of weeks now. I won't tell you exactly which ones are on there, because it will spoil the DVD for you, but I just want your opinions on whether you thought the DVD was accurate, or whether the number one, maybe the top 5, whether they were your top 5, because I disagree with the number 1 finisher, and I'll leave it as that. Personally, I disagree with that, but so just if you want to send in your opinions and your views on that DVD and the finishers, that'd be great.
Right, as you were saying, then let's hop into our mailbag. Thanks for everyone sending us in questions. Like we said earlier, hop onto our Facebook group, the Hot Tag Podcast. Email us hottagmailbag@yahoo.com. And today we've got some questions in, and let's kick off with. There's a couple of questions actually here that kind of link up to stuff we said on the show, so it's good to see that we've inspired a few questions. First one is from Joe Nunn, and he says, I heard you guys mention a dislike for WWE's themed pay-per-views on the show. Could you go into why? I think it was me who said that last week actually, when we were talking about Hell in a Cell. Yes, it's quite a big thing for me, because I know Night of Champions we were talking about, weren't we? And how every title was defended on that show, yet most of the titles are defended on their pay-per-views in the first place. So it kind of makes it a bit kind of redundant, that pay-per-view. Yeah, especially with Hell in a Cell coming up, it makes much more sense now to get a kind of question like this. Hell in a Cell on the pay-per-view, typically you see 2 Hell in a Cell matches. We've already seen 1 Hell in a Cell match this year because Triple H faced The Undertaker at WrestleMania, which was an awesome match. Yeah, especially in a match like Hell in a Cell, which, you know, traditionally you saw about once a year, and it was, you know, a real big thing to get excited about. We know now that every year we'll see at least 2 matches on, you know, one specific night that we know what's going to happen, and there you have 2 of these big matches, which are, you know, the real kind of what Hell in a Cell was always the match that kind of ended the, you know, hottest feud of the year essentially, and you know, going back to Sheamus and the Big Show, there's no build up for that match at all yet. It's taking place inside Hell in a Cell. There's no build for these Hell in a Cell matches. And because you know exactly when a Hell in a Cell match is going to take place, it kind of defeats the purpose, the object of the match, and really devalues it, I think.
I think gimmick matches need to be, you know, every so often, because if you flood the TV show with it, then it's going to become just a every other week thing. The excitement goes out of it. It's not the draw it should be. If you had a huge, say, you know, Rock Cena, for example, and they were feuding all throughout the year, at the end of the year, you think, well, this feud has got to go one way or the other. Let's settle this in the Hell in a Cell. It could be any 2 wrestlers, but that's a good thing to finish off a feud, or as a surprise one-off, or if you have it as a one-off throughout the year, but build up to it and make it a special thing. If you just have it as, you know, a whole pay-per-view based around that, where you're guaranteed to get at least 2 matches, it just defeats the object of it for me.
Yeah, it's like when Triple H and Undertaker had their Hell in a Cell match, you know, you were instantly drawn to that match because you thought, well, okay, these 2, you know, they had a really good, you know, the story of their feud was engaging, and it had been built up for really a year because of their match at WrestleMania 27. So there was actually... But
to be honest though, we both said, didn't we? We both watched WrestleMania together, and both of us agreed at the time that the feud was fantastic. The very good match, but the Hell in the Cell the cage didn't add anything to match. We thought, didn't we?
Yeah,
we thought it was pretty pointless.
That was the thing. They really didn't make much use of the Cell, which was kind of... although the fact that they had made it a Hell in a Cell match was, you know, very intriguing and kind of gripped you, and, you know, you were, oh cool, you know, this is going to be the Hell in a Cell match we've wanted to see for years. I mean, the last Hell in a Cell match that I was interested by was the Edge Undertaker Hell in a Cell match at SummerSlam, and so when it was announced for WrestleMania, you know, I was really anticipating that, but when it came down to it, although it was a great match, it really didn't need to be inside Hell in a Cell. But it doesn't just, you know, this whole gimmick pay-per-view thing doesn't just concern Hell in a Cell matches. I mean, like you said, you've got Night of Champions. A couple of years ago they did Fatal 4-Way, where like the 3 big championship matches were done in Fatal 4-Way matches. Who cares about that? Also, the only 2 kind of gimmick pay-per-views that I actually agree with are Elimination Chamber, because it's kind of like the middle road between, you know, the kind of final stop before WrestleMania, and it gives someone, you know, that final opportunity for someone who didn't win the Royal Rumble, you know, to go through an Elimination Chamber match to get that. I think that makes sense. I also think Money in the Bank makes sense because that was always just a once a year match anyway. At WrestleMania, it was a tradition. So having that match still twice a year now, but having that on one pay per view makes sense to me still. Having 2 matches, I think the matches they've always been able to deliver twice on the same show, so I'm very happy with there being a Money in the Bank pay per view, switching from the WrestleMania tradition. But what other gimmick pay per views are there? I think they were planning to do a triple threat one actually a few years ago, which would have been even more pointless than Fatal 4-Way because you see those every week.
Okay, let's look at the second question now. This is from Robin Avery, and he says, I disagree with what you said about wrestlers having to look like stars. Seems a bit redundant to make such a comment. Well, first of all, thanks Robin for taking the time to answer the question. Sending a question in. I think that one was aimed at me because I sort of went on this one last week. Right, I didn't actually say, you've misunderstood here, I didn't actually say wrestlers have to look like stars. What I said is there aren't enough wrestlers that you look at and you think they're a star. they haven't got, say, not as many nowadays have the it factor. Whereas I said, you look to wrestlers back in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, like Hulk Hogan, DiBiase, Jake the Snake, Macho Man, Warrior, Mr. Perfect. You looked at them and you thought, wow, this guy's got something. This guy, you look at him and you think, this guy is something special. Whereas you look at someone like maybe today, like your Heath Slater or your Brodus Clay, or you could name so many of them, and you look at them and they just look like any other wrestler, almost like a generic wrestler in some respects. Now you look at wrestlers and say like Ric Flair, you looked at him, he had it, he was cool, cocky, suave, and he could wrestle, and he looked like a champion. You looked at that guy holding the belt and you thought that guy is a champion. Same thing I said last week about Robert Roode. He's a good looking guy. He looks like he wears the suits, struts to the ring, and he can wrestle his ass off every night of the week. That is what I meant. I didn't mean you had to look like a star. You didn't have to be 6'8", 300 £300 and be solid muscle. That's not what I meant. I mean, you had to look like you had the it factor.
And he also wears the Ric Flair robe.
Yes.
Actually, you mentioned last week about Austin Aries, beating Robert Roode for the TNA Championship, and him, not kind of having that sort of same star power. And interesting, actually, because I was looking at Impact the other day, and I was having a think about Austin Aries, and I was thinking, well, he's been such a paper champion since winning it from Robert Roode, and he was in the ring there with Jeff Hardy, Robert Roode, and Bully Ray in this tag team match, the main event of Impact this week, and he just looked like he shouldn't be there. I mean, he struts down to the ring with his cape, which is kind of cool, which says the greatest man that ever lived. Well, for a start, you look kind of silly because that's grammatically incorrect. But he just looked so out of place, and he's been such a paper champion because he just doesn't look like he should be holding that championship. It's kind of too soon. Yet he's in there with people like Bully Ray who look like they belong there. Jeff Hardy, obviously, he's made his bed, and Robert Roode. If
you look at some people that have made some big claims over the years, now you look at Mr. Perfect. When he came in, he had all his vignettes and said, you know what, I'm better than you, I'm faster than you, I'm better at sports than you, I can do anything better than you, I'm perfect. You look at Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff. He said, I'm simply wonderful, I'm just better than you, okay? That's all very well, but when you get in the ring, you have to back that up. Now, it would have been no good for the WWF to build these wrestlers up as Mr. Wonderful, Mr. Perfect, had they gone out to the ring and stunk the place out every night and couldn't wrestle. But they could wrestle, and they lived up to their moniker. But you got Austin Aries and says, I'm the greatest man that ever lived. Now, I saw Hulk Hogan putting him over probably about a month ago, and he said, I was a star in this business, brother, but you took it to the next limit. You're a better star than I ever was. And that to me is just absolute rubbish,
That really came from Hogan's mouth?
That came from Hulk Hogan's mouth. He put someone else over. But Austin Aries, he's a good wrestler, but I don't look at him and think, man, that guy is the champion of the world. He is the best thing going today. I just don't see it, and that's what I meant. Nothing against their wrestling ability, but I don't see him as a guy that can carry the company, and that's what I meant by superstars. There are stars and there are superstars. It doesn't matter how big you are, how small you are. Chris Benoit was a small guy. He was a superstar. He was larger than life. He was a suplex machine. He was master of the crossface. He wasn't a big guy, but he looked like he was a star. That's what I meant.
Yeah, I think it's like, well, I don't want to go over myself, but it's like, the wrestling climate today, and all about TV. It's like I was saying last week, professional wrestling, needs, television to thrive, and people, watch TV to watch stories unfold, and all good stories have characters in it, and people want to believe in these characters, want to be invested in these characters. And you're not going to be a star without having a decent character, and people want to watch you because you are this interesting character. So, you know, I compared, you know, pro wrestling to you know, fictional shows like, I don't know, or anything. Take anything, for example, you know, from, you know, The Sopranos to Mad Men or something, full of characters that you want to watch. That's all about pro wrestling. It's the combination between this storytelling and this athleticism, and you know, especially today, and how the business has changed from, you know, more entertainment based. That's what flies today. That's kind of what you need.
Exactly. So it's not down to wrestlers having to look like stars. It's wrestlers that you look at and you know they're a star, and that's what we meant. Okay, next question is sent in by Jeremy Booth, and he says, who should be inducted into next year's Hall of Fame ceremony?
I presume you mean WWE, not TNA.
Yes, definitely WWE, I presume. Well, I mean, there's a couple of guys that are obvious that will be inducted. I mean, look at like The Undertaker, Triple H. You know, they will be inducted one day. I think it's too soon because they're still very much on the scene. This is why I disagree with last year with Edge being this year, because yes, Edge is definitely worthy of being in the Hall of Fame. I just think they could have left it a bit after his retirement to do it. I feel it's too soon.
Yeah, kind of thing. We get a lot of flack for this, but the same thing with Eddie Guerrero. I mean, did he have to be inducted, you know, the year after he died? I mean, I'm not saying that in a nasty way, obviously. I mean, you know, he had a Hall of Fame career, but it's like, you know, we'll let it breathe for a while, and you know, give it a few years and let people reflect on everything he's done before you induct him. It's the same thing with Edge. That's
right. I mean, there's guys that will never be that should be inducted that never will be, and not through his own fault, because, well, through his own fault in many ways. Bruno Sammartino. Now, Bruno has been approached, I think, several times to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, but there's no way he's going to accept it. Because him and Vince McMahon, as you know, do not get on. Does not believe in wrestling today. Doesn't want anything to do with it. There's him. I'm trying to think else. I think. I mean, Honky Tonk Man. Now, Honky Tonk Man was voted as the greatest ever WWF or WWE Intercontinental Champion, as voted by WWE fans. Yes, he wasn't the greatest wrestler in the world, but he will tell you himself he's not a wrestler, he's an entertainer. But the thing with the WWE Hall of Fame is, you've got to remember, is they quite often have a non-compete contest clause, for like 45 days before the Hall of Fame and 45 days after. Now, if you're Honky Tonk Man, since the 90s, he's been doing all his work mainly in the Indies. Now, he doesn't want to be told when he can and can't wrestle, because you have to clear all your bookings for 90 days, 45 days before and 45 days after. Now, I think it's a $5,000 payday as well. I think you get $5,000 for the Hall of Fame. You get a first class flight in. You get
accommodation, I imagine.
Sorry?
Accommodation?
Yeah, so you get your flight, accommodation, all first class. You get a $5,000 payday. But as Paul Orndorff said, I got a great flight, I had a great meal, I stayed in a top hotel, and they gave me a $35 plaque that I left in the hotel room. So Honky Tonk Man at the moment, I mean, I haven't asked him, I don't think, but for next year, but he should go in greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time.
I think did they ask him a couple of years ago and he couldn't because he had a booking that he had and he didn't want to drop it. A couple of years ago, I think.
I don't know. I mean, personally, I think that if they, I mean, he says that they haven't asked him, yeah, and this was as good as his last interview this year. But I personally, if they did ask him, he probably would go. I don't think he'd turn it down, really. Have you got any thoughts on who should be in?
Always such a tough one, the Hall of Fame, because I think there's people in there who shouldn't kind of be in there. I think it gets to a point now where they've kind of started inducting people who just have had careers in a sense, and they haven't wrestled for a long time, rather than having careers that are actually Hall of Fame worthy. Legend is a term that gets thrown around, a lot these days when people refer to. Again, going back to Eddie Guerrero, when people refer to him as a legend, I don't kind of consider Eddie Guerrero a legend of professional wrestling.
No,
I said I'll probably get loads of flack for that, but same when people said about Owen Hart. I mean, he being a legend. I don't consider people legends just because they've wrestled and now they don't, or something, or they've died or something. Like, they really need to. Okay, don't get me wrong. Eddie Guerrero's had a fantastic career. Owen Hart, a fantastic career, but they were both careers, sadly cut short, and they never kind of. I don't think they stamp their legacies enough to become legends.
Yeah, I think Owen Hart will really. Again, this is not being nasty to anyone at all. I mean, he's a great wrestler, but I think Owen Hart is going to always be remembered for for his death more than his wrestling career. I mean, he didn't have a particularly. He had a few with Bret Hart, which put him on the map, and he beat Bret at WrestleMania 10. Had a good series of runs with him, but really, it wasn't an amazing wrestling career he had. I mean, he was a Blue Blazer. He was, that's what he was reduced to when he died. Was going back to the Blue Blazer gimmick, which unfortunately was, down to his death. Eddie Guerrero, very good wrestler, part of a legendary wrestling family, but was he a legend of the business? That I'm not quite sure of. Jake the Snake Roberts. I mean, Jake's got his problems, I know. But he comes back every so often to like a one-off show with them. He gets on, does bits and pieces with WWE. So I think he's still on good terms with them. But people say he's the greatest psychologist in the business. He's got wrestling psychology down to a fine art. Okay, let's look at our match of the week. We're going all the way back to 1991 for SummerSlam. And it was the IC title match, the Intercontinental title match between Bret the Hitman Hart and the current champion, Curt Hennig, Mr. Perfect. I remember that one because I was absolutely devastated by the result because Bret Hart actually beat Curt Hennig with the sharpshooter to become the champion. He made him tap. Curt Hennig at the time was being managed by Coach, who was also involved in the match on the outside. I remember this match mainly because I remember that it was Curt Hennig's sort of last match before he went out on injury, and his back was extremely painful. He was suffering badly, and really he should have not wrestled that night, but out of respect to Bret, he wanted to be there for him, and Bret Hart remembers that he was there for him, and he wanted to put his friend over for the title.
Yeah, I remember seeing this match up, I think it was a couple of years ago, the last time I saw it actually. It's always, it's in terms of Mr. Perfect matches in the WWE, it's always certainly up there. And was it the King of the Ring? They had another match as well. Another
match at King of the Ring, but this match that was also considered a fantastic match. But this one here, a classic. But this one was many of the wrestlers today consider a wrestling clinic. It had two of the most technically skilled wrestlers of their generation, both second. I want to say second degree athletes, but they're not, are they? I mean, second generation is what I mean to say. Second generation athletes. Bret's dad, Stu Hart, legendary wrestler and promoter. Kurt's dad, Larry X Hennig. So, you couldn't ask for more credentials. This match had everything. It was a brawling style as well, a lot of brawling. There was technical skill pouring out of the match. I thought Kurt had won when he put on the perfect plex, but Bret Hart kicked out of it. And then there was a weird twist at the end when Kurt was in control, and Bret managed to spin him into the sharpshooter. And obviously won the match. And afterwards, I remember him ripping off Curt Hennig's leotard or his wrestling tights off, and Curt Hennig was reduced to running back to the back in his pants.
I think this match was quite a turning point in terms of the wrestling style in WWE, because it was kind of throughout the 80s and to 1990 really sort of the wrestling in WWE was more obviously WWE was more character based, going through the rock and wrestling era, and the wrestling was kind of a lot of brawling and everything, and I think when in a match like Bret Hart versus Curt Hennig comes along, and it's very much this technical showcase really, almost this kind of, I mean, Bret Hart was almost this kind of no gimmick needed kind of wrestler. I mean, he was just that good in the ring that his wrestling did his talking, and that was how he got over. And the same thing for Curt Hennig, yet his his talents in the ring and his natural charisma naturally kind of built up to this heel persona that he had. it was basically just two excellent technical wrestlers going at it, and in a very fast-paced, methodical matchup. And I think this was going forward from this match, I think the wrestling style in WWE, this kind of set the foundations for what was to become throughout the 90s, when the whole wrestling changed so much in the period of 10 years in terms of how fast matches, the action in the matches happened. You saw more kind of, I'd say, athleticism, at least in WWE.
Well, but I think it paved the way for others, didn't it? I mean, if you look at that SummerSlam card, you had the main event, which you had, it was a match made in hell, wasn't it? It was the Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior against Sergeant Slaughter, the Iron Sheik with General Adnan. Now, there was no technical skill in that match. It was just big men brawling. I think Sid Vicious was referee for that one, so it was going to be absolutely no skill, or it was to be a pounding match. Whereas the other end of the spectrum, you had technical wrestling. You had enough technical wrestling in the Bret Hart match, to last, enough for the whole show. It was also Bret Hart's very first singles title, and it paved the way for him to then go on a very good singles career and eventually becoming the WWE champion. So it certainly put him on the map.
Yeah, I was watching the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, the greatest rivalries DVD, and that's an excellent DVD. And they talk about, Hogan and everything, and these guys kind of, not very technically gifted, certainly getting over in their own way. But those two sort of paving the way, along with people like Kurt Hennig, for this, for the smaller guys kind of rising to the top. And I think matches like this one at SummerSlam 1991 really paved the way for what was to come throughout the 90s and leading up to what we have today in terms of pro wrestling in the WWE. And that is our match of the week, so do what you can to check that one out, and it's definitely a classic for the Intercontinental title. So I think that just about brings us to the close of episode number 2 of the Hot Tag Podcast. Thanks for listening in, as always.
I'd just like to say thanks to the to our fans, or at least our listeners. Just like to remind everyone again, like last week, this is just our opinions. This is just for fun. We'd like to hear your views, good or bad, about the show. We need your questions. There cannot be a show without your questions. Again, we're not wrestling experts. We're just two fans. So we like discussing your views. So send us your questions in. Send us your reviews in. Also, reminding you again about the Facebook page. Please go on the Facebook page and post your comments on there and your suggestions. And next time we'll have a competition for you.
Yep, hopefully should be giving away more DVDs then. Again, congratulations to the 3 folks who won the Falls Count Anywhere DVD. And just search the Hot Tag Podcast on Facebook to join our Facebook group. Email us any questions you have, hottagmailbag@yahoo.com. And also Twitter as well, @BritGeekARCN. Of course, also follow Steve Gawick's Twitter even, @Gawick, GERWECK. And also many thanks to Barry Wilkinson at episode 3 for the logo, for the Hot Tag Podcast logo. Very cool stuff indeed. Just go to www.episode3.co.uk for that website. And also on next week's, the next show actually in 2 weeks' time, which will be October 13th, we'll be doing reviews of the CM Punk's Best in the World DVD, Money in the Bank 2012, and also have a lot more. But don't forget to send us your questions.
Goodbye.
Thanks a lot.